Welcome to Developing Leadership the Genuine Contact Way, where we're focused on nourishing a culture of leadership by applying timeless principles of life to the art of leadership. In each episode, we will be exploring one key principle. We'll share our own wisdom and insights and invite you to consider your own experiences in life and business so far, and how you want to further your leadership development with this theme. Our theme this week is all about choice. I'm Rachel Bolton, and I'm here with Birgit Williams. We want to start out today by inviting you to think of choice making as the only real power that a human being has. Making a choice creates the opportunity to make a decision in the moment and act on it. Life and leadership requires a series of choices to be made. Choice is the opportunity to make a decision. The decision is the finalizing of that choice. All choices and decisions have consequences.
And you might be thinking that this isn't a particular power. And yes, indeed, it is. You even have choice of what thoughts you are thinking, what thoughts you allow yourself to dwell upon. You have a lot of choice in every single moment. And as Rachel has invited you to do, please give this some thought. How frequently are you making choices? Is it pretty continual?
It really is continual throughout the day. And as you were saying, like maybe people might be thinking that choice isn't really a power. I feel like the Aries in me was rebelling, like, oh no, I'm quite clear when I feel like I don't have that power of choice. And it really stirs up everything inside of me. So choice making is definitely something that is valuable and is something that when we really become aware of it, it's fascinating how many choices we make over the course of a day.
I really liked that you talked about how it feels when you are in a situation where it appears as though you don't have choice, like rules and regulations imposed upon you, especially those that don't make much sense. And that, that rebelliousness might come out, but what it feels like if, as a person, what it feels like to your power, if you're in circumstances where you don't feel that you have choice regarding that circumstance.
So we want to invite you to explore some opportunities for growing your skillfulness with choice making. And I think that this is a great time to take a look at this because even when we feel like we don't have a choice, what we ultimately are making the choice to do in that moment is to follow along with that rule or regulation that might not make sense, or to follow along with the thing that is happening, rather than making a different choice that might be one that is dangerous in some way or harmful in some way as a result. So in growing our skillfulness with choice making, we start by looking at being conscious about choice making. And we've got a couple of steps that we want to offer for you here. Step one is about adjusting your thoughts and beliefs about the inevitability of making choices as a power that you actually have in your life and in your leadership. So it's simply about adjusting those thoughts and beliefs. And I notice I'm saying simply, but also laughing a bit because there's tremendous power and tremendous growth in really being conscious of having the choice, having that power in your life and in your leadership, that everything is your choice. Step two is about developing awareness. And a way that you might go about doing that is to grab a journal or some note paper and to create 3 columns. The first column is for recording choices that you have made. The second is for acknowledging whether the choice became a decision or not. And there's a little bit of a fine edge there to walk. And the third column is for recording the consequences of that choice. And we'd invite you to do this for a whole week. and to keep track of all of the choices that you have been making in your life and in your leadership. And I'm wondering if maybe we should just pause and talk about doing this activity and that difference between choices and decisions uh, before we step into the other steps of growing your skillfulness with choice making.
And I'll talk a little bit about that at first, about the exercise of developing awareness of the choice making that you are doing. It takes noticing and to notice, like, aha, this is a choice that I just made. And it's particularly interesting when I'm doing that personally with choosing my beliefs, choosing my thoughts, and paying attention, noticing what's going on in my busy mind and what I'm thinking about, what I choose to focus on. So choice making is, it to me, it feels almost as I'm standing on 2 feet, and I'm balancing back and forth between my 2 feet, where am I going to put my weight? What am I choosing to do? And saying, okay, right now, this is the choice, this is the step, this is where I put my focus. And I lift that foot up a little, and the other one goes down, going, yeah, and maybe I'm choosing this over here a little bit and choosing my focus to be there. There is definitely a decision in making that choice. But here for this activity, when we're talking about, is it a decision? That's a different kind of decision. That's the decision that after you go through the choice making of what you want, what you're thinking about in a particular circumstance, a particular moment in your time, you actually go, I am now making this as a decision. I'm taking this in hand. It is a decision that I'm making, not so much that choice in the moment, but it's an aware, conscious um, declaration to self that you're making a decision.
For me, I feel like that decision almost immediately after it, there's some level of action that occurs. And and as you were talking, I was thinking about like what are those examples of like having, the weighing of one foot or another. And I think a really common one, at least for lots of people I know, is like how often along the way do you make the choice that says, I'm going to eat healthy today? And maybe you made the choice that you bought the healthy groceries and you made the choice of what dinner you might be preparing with those healthy groceries tonight. But then when it actually comes down to dinner time, that the decision you make is to pick up the phone and call for some takeout, and that you're going to, divert that healthy dinner to another day, when you in fact will turn that choice making of I want to eat healthy into the decision to actually prepare and enjoy the healthy meal that you had chosen for yourself.
I'm also thinking about an example to do with parenting, and I'll think of my own parenting when I had younger children, and it was my choice when they would ask me for certain things. My choice was to divert a problem by saying, no. That would be my no, no, you can't do that. Don't you remember that you're supposed to clean your room? Or don't you remember that you're on for making supper or whatever? So I would do the no. And then my children came to understand that that was a choice, but it wasn't a decision. It wasn't like a final no, because then they would say, well, here's the particular facts for this moment in time, whatever it was. And I might, and often did, shift that no into a yes. And that would be my decision. So this business of choice making, being skillful at recognizing how we make choices, what those choices are, um, is combined with the moment of the actual decision. And by the way, that's an example of parenting that isn't something I recommend. Because it causes the child to argue for their rights.
I am not always great at it, but I have learned from that example to ask the questions and get the facts before saying the no, so that the arguing is not in fact arguing, but is developing that clarity of choice, so that the right decision gets arrived at the first time. So that's a next generation of learning from that particular example. Moving along now in looking at your growing of your skillfulness with choice making, we've given you some examples of the kinds of choices that you might be noticing for yourself as you're journaling over the course of a week, of the choices that you're making in your life and in your leadership. The next step is about enhancing awareness. At the end of a week, so in this whole week, all you have done is notice those choices and write them down. But now, in order to enhance your awareness at the end of the week, to take some time to reflect about what you have recorded and how you're feeling. In the process, you are enhancing awareness of yourself as a choice maker based on what you're noticing and what you're feeling, and how you might want to do things the same or differently going forward so that your choice making feels good. And then the last step in growing your skillfulness with choice making that we're going to suggest for you today is to expand your capacity. So once you have enhanced awareness of yourself as a choice maker, to now draw some conclusions for yourself about what you personally need to do to grow your skillfulness with choice making. And I think both of these examples we've shared, both the parenting one and the food one, are easy examples of what are the choices you actually want to make going forward, and what can you learn for yourself about choice making from those kinds of things.
For me, when I was growing my skillfulness with choice making, the most valuable part of that was developing my awareness that I was choice making even with my thoughts. Because prior to that, I would let my thoughts get stuck into certain patterns and certain thinking that I wasn't aware was happening. And I would be basing my leadership, I would be basing my decision making on a less than adequate platform for choice making. But as soon as I shifted by doing these activities and shifted my awareness and started to develop that practice of saying, aha, that's a choice. I can make a different choice in this moment. That's where I've let my thoughts go. That's a belief I've chosen to have. That's a belief I can let go. As soon as I developed that awareness from that noticing, and simply even having this subject of the fact that I could grow my skillfulness with choice making uh, in front of me, all sorts of things changed in my leadership in my life.
I love that you ended with it being in your leadership and your life, because of course these episodes are all about exploring how we develop our leadership. And so we want to end today by talking a little bit about developing your leadership in choice making. So skillfulness in choice making is a really important skill in life and in leadership. And we hope that if you weren't thinking about it in that way up until now, that over the course of the last little while, you are starting to see this as a possibility for yourself as well. if you have not been so intentional in your awareness of choice making up until now, or maybe even if you have been, but you are running into some struggles, we know that you might start feeling stuck or afraid or disappointed in how you're making choices, especially if you're bringing some awareness to things that you hadn't noticed about your own patterns before. So, we just want to invite you to consider that it could be good to seek the help of a practice buddy or a coach to grow your skillfulness in choice making in a way that feels good and is intentional. So, this might be reaching out to somebody who's also watching or listening to these episodes and doing this work together in a sort of accountability way, or seeking out someone who can help you in this way more professionally. Birgit, before we wrap up for today, is there anything else that you are thinking about as some last words of wisdom or other things to consider?
I liked an example that you had given, and this goes back to that parenting example, Rachel, where you collect your facts. You collect enough information so that your choice making is coming from the amount of information that you've been able to collect. And I think that that is true for each of us. We collect a certain amount of information. It might be a small amount, it might be a large amount. We might collect that information in a number of different ways, including the use of our intuition. But what you're indicating there is to slow down, and before responding, before making a decision, to say, I've got choices. I always have choices, and even if it's only the choice of how I'm going to react to a horrible situation, because sometimes awful things come up, but it's that I've got choices. I've got choices in this moment. And I want to make the best decisions. So I'm going to use all my ways of gathering information, using, and it might be in the instant, but to use my intuition, to use my intelligences, and to then, after the pause, to say, have I sufficient of that information? And then to go ahead and make your decision. My husband Ward has he spent 30 years in the field of sales, and this goes back a time, but he would always say, if somebody phones and is wanting something from you, they're coming into the call with a particular intention. And he said, always ask them to hold for just a moment and take that moment to breathe and to say, whatever the intention is, whatever the subject is, I have choices before I come to a decision. But it sets up a different field within oneself to then go on with that phone call and be more aware of the choices you have, and have those choices in front of you before making a decision.
I I love this reminder, and it's one that I think of for myself, like as informed consent. You know, if you were to be, if a doctor is presenting to you a medical procedure or a medication you're supposed to be taking or something, they're bound to make sure that you have informed consent, that you know all of the risks and all of the factors of why they are presenting that to you as the best choice. And I've kind of adopted that as the thinking in my own life too. Is my choice actually informed consent? And then from there, that's exactly what you're offering then, is this like, is it informed from my intuitive sense? Do I have questions from my logical self? Emotionally, how am I feeling about this that I need to check in on? And also, you know, are there any physical practicalities that need to be considered? So I think that what we're wrapping up with here today is some really powerful ways of having that, firstly, the belief of I have power in making those choices, but secondly, some tips for how to make sure that when you're making those choices, it's with that fully informed consent. And with that, we are going to invite you to, firstly, we're saying thanks for joining us for today. And we want to remind you to check out the next episode to continue your learning. Before you go, be sure to subscribe so that you can have all of our episodes delivered to you with whichever platform you are enjoying listening to us on.